It is Matt Edmondson.
Hello! I think I've got the slight problem that anything I say, no matter how sincere it is, it always sounds like I'm being sarcastic. You know, I struggled to begin with I think just the transition of being a dad. My dad was an alcoholic, and I didn't really know that as a kid. I didn't have any experience with babies or children. And the limited experience I did have was like, oh my gosh, these poor people, they seem like they're having a terrible time looking after this toddler. Why would anyone do that to themselves? And I think that fear meant that I was very sort of not interested in babies, not interested in children. He was a really fun dad. When he was on, he was an incredibly brilliant dad. In anyone who's experienced someone that they're close to taking their own life, there is sadness, but there is also a sort of hatred that can come with it.
Welcome to the Dadvengers podcast, sponsored by Tonka, because being tough is all about getting out and playing. I'm Nigel Clarke, TV presenter and performer, and I'm also host of this wonderful podcast where we explore different aspects of parenting and hone in on the dad point of view. And mums, grandparents, carers, we want you involved in the conversation too. So let's talk, let's laugh, let's share the things we find difficult and become the type of dads we really want to be. Welcome to another episode of the Dadventures podcast. And today's guest is a dad of one, soon to be two. He's hosted shows like The Extra Factor and Release the Hounds for ITV, but you'll most probably know his dulcet tones from being on the nation's favourite radio station, Radio 1. It is Matt Edmondson.
Hello! That's the first time my tones have ever been described as dulcet.
Dude, you've got one of those voices, right? You've got one of those voices that I would say everyone in the country is like, I know that voice. I know it. You've got one of those.
When I meet people, they say, oh, you sound like you do on the radio, as if I'd go on the radio and put on a different voice, which actually I probably should have done, because then I wouldn't have had to always have that conversation.
Yeah, no, totally. It's one of those distinctive ones. I wouldn't be surprised if you can't start getting asked later down the line to do some nature, do some science, do all of that.
I'm not so sure about the old nature dog. You want, David Attenborough's got gravitas and authority, and I don't think I bring any of that.
You'll bring some quirk to it. When you see one of those animals like mating in the wild or something, you'll bring some comedy quirk to it, I think.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, I do voiceover for a show called Dress to Impress, which is a dating show, which is very much about people trying to mate in the wild. And so there's some crossover there, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be the go-to guy for that. I think I've got the slight problem that anything I say, no matter how sincere it is, it always sounds like I'm being sarcastic, and I'm not. Most of the time I'm really not. Sometimes I am, but most of the time I'm not. But there's something about, I don't know what it is, the tone of my voice or the cadence of it. Everything I say sounds like I'm trying to take the mickey out of stuff, and I'm not.
We know you're not, but I do get a little bit of what you're saying. I do get a little bit of that. So, sir, you are a dad to the lovely Ivy, who's 5 now, is that right?
She's 5, just started school about 3 weeks ago, and the house has never felt quieter.
You're enjoying the peace.
Do you know what? I sort of am, and I'm sort of not. It's been a bit weird having her go off to school. Because she was so much of our days every day, and I've been working in this incredibly bland room that you can see that I'm in right now, on and off, for the last year or so. And it was always nice to be able to either have her come and invade this space and distract me, or me be a bit bored and head downstairs and hang out with her. And it just means that our hangout time is a little bit harder to arrange, because I do my radio show at the weekends, and that's her 2 days off. And so I've had to sort of shift my time around to make sure that I'm getting the maximum Ivy time that I can. So yeah, sometimes it's lovely for the peace, and other times, I think, oh, wish she was here.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I heard that you weren't super like proactive about wanting to be a dad. You didn't want being a dad wasn't your thing.
No, no, I think I feared it quite a lot, and it was never something that I thought that I was really eager for in life. And I think if I'd met someone and they said I don't want kids, I'd have been like, okay. Knowing what I know now, that would have been the wrong decision. But I was very unfazed by it or unfussed by the idea of it. It was a kind of take it or leave it thing for me. My wife really, she comes from a big family and she's got three brothers and all of her aunties and uncles have all had four kids. So there's like loads of kids around.
Yeah.
And she was really keen to be a parent. And I think she eased me into it. You know, we got a dog to begin with, and we realized, oh, that's okay. You know, we can be responsible for a living thing, and then yeah, she was really into the idea, and you know, I struggled to begin with I think just the transition of being a dad, almost the label of like, oh, I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
I found harder than the process of actually doing any parenting. But that, you know, that wore off over time. And, you know, you often think if I could go back and tell myself not to worry or tell myself to be less stressed about this or to enjoy this thing more, it's very easy to do. And I feel like my entire life is those sorts of moments. I would go back and say, relax. She's the best person ever. You're gonna love her more than anything, and it's gonna be okay. And I think until you experience it, you hear people say, "Oh, you're going to love them more than anything, and it's going to be incredible," and you don't really believe it. Uh, Although the other thing that I felt was said to me a lot, and that maybe I thought there was something wrong with me with regards to was people would say, "Oh, you know, the second my baby was born, I felt, you know, there was like a shift. I felt like the whole world changed. My life was not about me anymore. It was about this other person, or like some sort of moment of epiphany." And it just didn't happen for me at all. I had no moment of epiphany. It was like, okay, we've got a baby now. But there was no like great feeling in me of the world has changed forever. And I worried for a while that, oh, that thing that people describe, I haven't experienced. What does that mean for me? Which is generally how my brain works quite a lot. So, you know, find a thing to worry about and worry about it. But for me, the joy of parenthood sort of kicked in at like year one and a half, two, when there was a little bit more interaction. And yeah, it's great.
It's a couple of things that I want to mention that you just said. One, that epiphany moment, because I didn't have that. You know, your baby comes out and you're meant to have that moment where you start bawling your eyes out and you're like, whoa, hold on, I'm a dad. I feel this change. I couldn't love you anymore. I didn't have that. I'm the same as you. And it's funny that you say that you were worried, not even worried about it, but that it was a concern to you and you felt a little bit anxious about it, because I was totally the other way. I was like, not worried that I didn't feel that, because I knew that I was going to get to know. It's like, I don't know, getting to know a new person, isn't it? You don't suddenly know that person.
And in terms of getting to know a new person, a baby, and I mean any baby, not specifically yours or mine, almost the worst person to get to know. You know, they want to keep you up all the time. They don't care about your boundaries. They're sick on you all the time. Well, you wouldn't have that person in your life. So there's something must have been drawing us back to these little things.
Definitely. The other thing I wanted to go back to was you, your head coming around to being more accepting and willing to become a parent, let's say, through, you know, you had a dog and you got eased into it. That you're lucky in some stages, in some ways, I should say. My situation was more like totally unplanned, very early in a relationship, boom, you're going to become a daddy. And I had to adjust. But I think men have to adjust. A lot of men have to adjust. And I think it's because, I don't know, and I want to ask you this question. Do you think it's because of the way generationally dads have been seen before. So before there was less getting involved with changing nappies, less getting involved in the early years, less being there for the school runs, taking them to nursery, all of those things. And now that's come around a bit and is changing. The landscape's totally different and we aren't as prepared for it as men.
I don't know. I think it's dangerous to generalize an entire sex, because I think everyone's going to handle it differently. I don't know culturally whether there is any sort of what's the word, adjustment from how previous generations did it, but there will have been dads who are really hands-on 50 years ago, and there will have been dads who are really hands-off. So I'm not sure. I think for me it was more just the sense of, I work in, or had worked in, like, youth-orientated media, and still do.
Yeah, you did CBeebies, right?
I did CBeebies, I did T4, ITV2, Radio 1, and I still do lots of those things. Not T4, they killed it, but the other things. And I think there was this feeling of like, oh, I'm now a dad. There's like a label that someone can put on me that says I'm a dad. Does that age me, even though I was quite young when it happened? So that was the worry there. In terms of your experience, I'm a very I'm quite an anxious person. I like to avoid risk. I'm very risk averse, and almost
having a baby is a risk.
Having a baby is a risk, but like almost comically so. I'm risk averse, and so the idea that out of nowhere, you're not planning this thing, and then a baby comes along, that I would have had to buy a passport on the dark web and leave the country. That would have absolutely terrified me. I heard a story recently, and it kept me up for a few days. So a friend of a friend of a friend were struggling to have children, and so they hired a surrogate. They got a surrogate. They lived in the States, and they were doing IVF. And as can happen with IVF, they got twins. So the surrogate was having twins. So they're like, okay, fine, we'll get these two kids out at the same time. Great. And I'm sure there are many benefits to that. And I'm sure there's a lot of pain as well in the early stages. But they were like, no, we'll do that. They'd been told that they couldn't conceive, and that's why they'd gone down the surrogate route. 2 months after their surrogate fell pregnant with IVF, they fell pregnant against all odds with twins. So they have 4 under 1. So and there's a 3-month age gap between the 2 twins. Now that, when you're like, oh, let's have a baby, and you end up with 4 babies, that's the sort of stuff that makes my head spin. And I think that'll keep me up at night, the idea of that.
That would keep anyone up at night. 4 babies waking up throughout the night, needing feet. No. No. I
think just the shock of like, oh, I've got to deal with this thing now. And it's not like, some things that happen in life that are unexpected. I try and think, will I be worried about this a year from now? Or will I be worried about this a month from now? Or will I be worried about it a week from now? And obviously with a baby, you're going to be worried about that baby until you die. And so, I think having the sudden surprise, I feel for you there. But you know what? It's probably a brilliant thing, right? You wouldn't take it back.
Wouldn't change it for the world. Would not change it for the world. Change the direction of my life. And yeah, if I was to go back, I would do exactly the same again.
Brilliant.
Literally. Speaking of more babies and multiples, you are about to become a father, part 2.
Yes. It doesn't feel real yet. So we're having a little girl, and she's due in January, and we're recording this in October. And so it doesn't feel like it's real yet. I mean, it is real because Bryony's quite heavily pregnant. But what's different this time round is that I feel like we were very tuned into the journey on the first time. We had the app that says they're the size of a kumquat or whatever, and you're like, oh, amazing. And then we did NCT, and we did hypnobirthing, which is fantastic, by the way. Strong recommend. But this time round, we haven't done anything. We've got a nursery. We haven't bought a cot. We haven't painted it. It's just like, it's referred to by Ivy as the junk room at the moment because we moved house. We just stuffed everything in there. We've not talked about names. We've not, we've done nothing, no prep. And it feels very weird. I feel very underprepared for it.
The thing is, you're going to go into nesting phase, like, as it gets closer. As January approaches, I'm sure that Bryony's going to say, hey, Matt, we need to get organised now.
Oh, she's hit the nesting phase already. Yesterday, I came downstairs and there was a guy cleaning our oven. And I was like, who's this guy? She said, oh, he's an oven cleaner. I was like, I didn't know that was a job, but it is. And I'll tell you what, the guy's done a smashing job. But I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought, you bought oven cleaner and did it, but I don't know what this guy did. Oh my goodness, it's unbelievable. It's like a new oven. But that definitely is born from a place of there's a baby on the way. We must get things ready. And so the oven got cleaned against my knowledge.
I want to delve into a couple of things. Firstly, your parenting experience, as in how you were parented as a child, and maybe how that sculpted your want to be a parent and how you are a parent now. So what was it like growing up for you?
Okay, so there are sort of two sides to this. So the first is, largely, it was fine. It was an atmosphere was harbored whereby rules weren't really a thing. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but as a kid, it felt good because no one likes to follow rules. Me and my sister were both pretty well behaved, and there was a real sense of, be a kid, just do what you want to do. Yeah, there were no chores, there were no kind of like, tidy a room or do this or do that. It was very freeing, and my sister and I were both very creative and creatively minded, and we always had little projects on the go. And I've not really grown out of that. I've always, got something ticking along that's, a bit of fun as a side project. And our parents really just indulged us in that. They would let us do, if we were into something, they came on the journey with us. So my sister got really big into Irish dancing off the back of watching Riverdance, and fell hard into it for 5 years. And they just took her along to all the Irish dancing events and got her the dress and supported her. I was into magic, and they were really, there's probably nothing worse than a child that's into magic because all they want to do is show you tricks all the time. And my parents were really supportive of that. I think they instilled me with this idea of, oh, you can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. And I don't think they ever said that, but the lack of resistance meant that you just went and did stuff. So, I was constantly up to unusual things that I look back on and think, oh, that's quite odd for a child to be kind of getting involved in that stuff. My parents were just very, very supportive and but never in a pushy way. Almost like they didn't know what was going on. They were just happy that I was keeping busy.
That's really cool. That's a really cool thing, though, because I think a lot of parents now strive for that, but maybe before it was, oh, you've got to concentrate on your work, do this, you've got to, focus on, I don't know, what football, or focus on your maths at school, but it sounds like you had a much more free rein to explore things and find what you liked and find what you enjoyed, which is great.
Yeah, and I used to flip between interests as a kid all the time, and there were sort of phases of my life that have been defined by like, oh my gosh, I'm really into this thing now. But there were little things along the way, like I remember wanting to learn Morse code, and so I went to the library, bought a book on Morse code, came home and learned it. And I think my mum was just happy that I was off doing something. And then the second part of that, I said it was sort of two parts, is that, and I didn't have a great awareness of this as a kid, but looking back, I've been able to make a lot of sense of it. So my dad was an alcoholic, and I didn't really know that as a kid. I knew that he liked to drink. I didn't know that he liked to drink that much. And at the time, he was a difficult guy. He was difficult, and he was often not all there. I don't mean like he was passed out drunk, although I'm sure that was the case sometimes. But I think that he was tired a lot, because I think drinking does that to you if you drink a lot. He was incredibly funny and hilarious, but I think he found life challenging, and he had bipolar, which got worse towards the end of his life. He sadly took his own life when I was 20,
I'm
and so
so sorry, dude.
thank you. We'd had quite a fractious teenage years, and so that was looking. If you'd have met me 10 years ago, and this was even after he died, and someone said, "Did you have a nice childhood?" I'd have said, "Yeah, it was fantastic. It was magical. It was brilliant." And it's only since, I think, having a kid, but also going and doing some work with a therapist, kind of looking back at all that stuff, I realized, okay, there was some dynamics in the house that just weren't great. And anyone who's got anyone in their life that's an addict will, I'm sure, relate to some of that. And so it's hard. If we'd have been doing this chat 10 years ago, I'd have been like, "Oh, it was great. Oh, let me tell you about our Christmases we had, or these holidays we had, or whatever." But I think that it's important to be honest about things like this, because I'm certain that other people will have had similar experience. In fact, I know they have, because I've spoken about it on social media, and the kind of the door that it knocks down to just say, this thing happened, I got through it, it was awful, but we live to tell the tale. Has been, I think quite useful for people. And also, there might be a dad listening who's worried about their own drinking, thinking, I don't want that to happen with my kids, and maybe this is the voice you need to hear.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's a huge part of the Dadventures podcast and what we do on the Dadventures site, and the talks that we have on Friday nights on Dad Chats is about modeling stuff and showing people that everyone goes through different situations, and there are ways to get out of those situations, ways to find help, ways to help yourself get to a better place. So yeah, everyone's stories that we have are so helpful to other people. So thank you for being open about this one.
That's all right.
You said your dad, you didn't know at the time. Do you think he was hiding it?
I think he probably was. I mean, I obviously have no way of knowing how bad it was. Towards the end of his life, I know it was very bad, his drinking. But I hadn't lived at home at that point for 5 years, so I wasn't keeping an eye on it. And I think as a kid, I was just keeping my head down, trying not to get involved, or not wanting to get involved. I think as a child, you do have a way of shielding yourself sometimes from things that could be hard. I think he was hiding it. I don't think that I would have been tuned into it particularly. I've always been I've always been quite disconnected from the present, if that makes sense. So I'm a big daydreamer, and those daydreams can sometimes be, oh my gosh, everything's so exciting, the world's the best place ever. And they can sometimes be, oh, the world's gloomy, it's bad, I'm in panic. But it tends to all go on up in my head, and I don't connect with the everyday space all that much. No, that sounds unusual, but I and it comes down to things like I'll throw in something lighthearted here. It comes down to things like, my wife will say, "Matt, there's a thing in the bedroom that has been there for 2 weeks that you put there. You're not going to move it." And I just literally haven't seen it. because I'm just not looking. I'm not connecting to it. I'm just in my own head thinking, oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, great. And I think I was like that as a kid. I was always in like a world of my own. And so I wasn't really connected deeply to what was going on around me. And I think also my mum is she's a people pleaser, and she's very much a sort of, oh, everything's okay, everything will be all right. And it means that when things weren't all right, it was sold as, oh no, it's just a thing. Oh, it's just this, or it'll be okay. And so no, I don't think I had a great awareness of it. And again, sort of before he died, we were able to put the label on it. Oh, you're an alcoholic. Let's try and get you some help. Sadly, not soon enough. But up until that point, if someone had said, are your parents alcoholics? I'd have been like, no, they like a drink, but no, God, absolutely not. And then you look back and think, oh yeah, he definitely was. My mum, not so much. I mean, she would drink, but in a very controlled way. Yes. So yeah, it's very hard to know. It's very hard to know. And I think because of my because of always being in my own head a lot, I've got really bad autobiographical memory. I find it really hard to remember stuff that I've done or places I've been. And from a kid, from yesterday, I'm really bad at remembering things.
We all go through that little bit of that. I can't remember what I did yesterday right now, and I'm not going to try to because it'll take me too long. We are so happy to have Tonka as our sponsor this series. Basic Fun's Tonka collection is packed full of fun vehicles for kids who want to get out and get tough with their toys. So dads, you've got no excuse. Grab that mighty steel classic truck. It's time to head to the sandpit for some tough play. Something that I'm interested in is maybe, and I'm just going to put this out there, just to trigger things really. Do you think maybe you were unconsciously aware? And do you think that maybe that unconscious awareness fed your lack of keenness to become a parent, knowing what you'd been through or what your dad had been like?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely certain. I think that because I'm the youngest sibling, so and one of my great fears, and it's interesting, I talked to different people, I've talked to a few different people about this, and some people are like, I'm with you, I had that same fear, and some people are like, oh no, I felt the opposite. One of my greatest fears was my parents having another child, because I didn't want the competition, I assume, but it used to keep me up at night, like, oh, what if they have another baby? What does that do to my position in the family? I hated the idea of it. And I think that fear meant that I was very sort of not interested in babies, not interested in children, not interested in, it was like, don't want them around. It's going to be very, they're going to be annoying, etc., etc. And I think I sort of stuck with that thing in my head. And, other people's kids can be annoying. They can be frustrating.
Your own kids can be annoying as well.
They can, but it's like it's like smelling your own fart. You don't mind so much. And I think that played into it. But I also had this sense of, my life, my kind of work. I'm really lucky in that a lot of it just comes from having an idea and then seeing if that idea can become a thing. And I probably have about 100 ideas a year, and 2 of them happen. But I have to make space for the 98 that don't to exist. And I sort of thought, well, having a kid, I'm just going to be hard to be. I got to be more regimented. There are going to be structures in place. And what I like to do, and it's very indulgent, is wake up and think, what do I want to do today? What's the universe telling me that I should focus on? I know I've got these things that I have to do, but what do I want to do? And I've always that's always how I've lived, and it's it's worked out all right. And so the idea of like throwing a grenade of a child in there that needs a sleep routine and all the rest of it, I think that was it. But I think more so it was just that I'd never I didn't have any experience with babies or children.
Yeah.
And the limited experience I did have was like, oh my gosh, these poor people, they seem like they're having a terrible time looking after this toddler. Why would anyone do that to themselves? That was I think the overarching thought. Maybe on some subconscious level I did think I think I do, not even on a subconscious level, on a conscious level, think I would never want Ivy to have to talk to a therapist about me. I would never want her to have to feel like she didn't have all of my attention, or that that I was in some way missing these years of her life. I think it's important to me that she doesn't experience some of the feelings that I have around my dad. And it's hard to talk about this stuff because it sounds like, oh, it was all negative. And actually there were so many fantastic, he was a really fun dad. When he was on, he was an incredibly brilliant dad. And loads of the stuff that I do that I know Ivy enjoys as a dad, I've nicked wholesale from him. But I also would want our relationship to be a different one. It's very in anyone who's experienced someone that they're close to taking their own life, there is sadness, but there is also a sort of hatred that can come with it. A sense of,
did you blame yourself at all?
No, I didn't. I mean, I hadn't.
Because I know that can happen. Some people do.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen for me. I was really aware that he had quite a severe mental health issue with the bipolar. And then when we discovered the drinking, I blamed him. I was filled with a sense of anger towards him. How could you do this? How could you do this to my mum? How could you do this to us? Just angry at, just angry at him. And that's I would never want Ivy to feel those feelings for me. I sort of want to be, BFFs. So I think it's been instructive in that sense. And I don't drink, and I decided that I wasn't going to drink when I was maybe 10. I just was like, I'm not going to do it. And
so you did know something.
It must be connected. It must be connected to the fact that that my dad was an alcoholic. But it was a really conscious decision in me of like, I'm not doing it. And I think it's really useful that I didn't, because I'm probably more similar to my dad than I would want to be. And I think if I had started drinking, I wonder whether or not I would have also been able to control my intake.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned just now about therapy, about having therapy about your dad. One of the things right now that is high on the agenda is men's mental health. How did you get to a position where you could comfortably go to therapy? Just because there are so many men out there who may want to go to therapy, but they have little blocks in their own heads. Men going to therapy is a big thing and a difficult thing. How did you manage to get to that point?
It took ages, to be honest. I was getting these mood swings that would feel like, and this is how I felt about it, like normality, and then a much lower depressive state. And when I was in the much lower depressive state, I thought, maybe I've got depression or something like that. And I tried a few times. I spoke to my doctor about it, and he was like, okay, yeah, you should go and try cognitive behavioral therapy. We'll sign you up to a course. And then by the time the course came along, like 3 months later, I was feeling fine again. And I was like, I probably don't need to do that. I can't even relate to that guy that was worried about it. And that maybe happened 2 or 3 times. And then I hit one of those down phases and it was really bad. And I was like, I'm going to have to just go and see someone else. And so I found a sort of private doctor and said, look, this is what's going on for me. And I described what was happening. And he said, oh, I think you've got cyclothymia. And I said, I don't know what that is. Literally never heard the word before. And he was like, it's a sort of relative of bipolar. It's like he described it as a sort of very watered down bipolar. So if bipolar is extreme mood, so extreme depression, very, very, very depressed. And at the other end of the spectrum, a lot of like hyper manic energy. So staying up all night or, embarking on almost superhuman levels of energy. This is like narrowed in from that. So you're never going as far to either extreme, but you're on this sort of undulating journey of an up phase, a down phase, an up phase, a down phase, and they're not equal in measure, and sometimes you get a little bit of time in between the two. And I was like, okay. So he said, go and see whoever, I can never remember the name, but whoever it is that you go and see about something like that. And so I did. And they said, yeah, we think you've got cyclothymia. And just the knowledge that there was a thing that I had was so, I can't tell you how relieving it was to be able to come home and go, oh, right. So it's not
That's
that
what
I'm
it is.
depressed or this thing. I have this thing that's going on for me. And it's a thing that I can notice and try and have some control over rather than it trying to control me. And so that was massively beneficial because what I had thought was, I'm this incredibly happy, productive guy until one of these dark clouds rolls in. And actually that isn't the case. That time when I'm feeling fantastic is part of the cyclothymia. And it in itself can be quite destructive because it can take over me. If I've got an idea for something, it's like I may as well not be in the house. I'll disappear for a week and I'll come out the other side having made something that should take 6 months to make, but I've done it in 5 days because I've been on this sort of energy that feels like it's someone else. And so, both of those states could be destructive if you let them control things. And so I thought, right, it's probably time to go and figure out how to manage this. And booked in with a therapist and was very kind of skeptical, really thought, what's going to happen here?
Like
and I was
someone who's probably listening now, very skeptical.
Well, I was really of the mind that, and bearing in mind that, my dad killed himself when I was 20, I was like, there's nothing to talk about with that. I'm totally chill about it. It happened. I've not thought about it since the day it happened, really. I'm absolutely fine. And,
life is rosy.
Exactly. No feelings to be unearthed here at all. And I remember in the first session, or one of the first sessions, she was talking, just getting a sense of where I was at and all the rest of it. And I was going for like, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling depressed sometimes. And she'd say, tell me about what things were like as a kid. And I was like, oh my God, here goes the therapist. Wants to know what it was like as a kid. Fine, I'll indulge you with some questions. And they have an amazing way of guiding you back into your own head and back into your own life. And it's incredible how much was just sitting at the surface, ready to come out. And so, she mentioned my dad. And the first time I was like, no, there's nothing to see there. Because I probably, self-defense, you're thinking, I don't want to open up that box of trauma. But it's so worth opening because I never spoke about it before. I went 10 years. I didn't even talk to my friends about it. And now here I am talking to, we don't know each other. I'm talking to you about it. And imagine how freeing that must be for a person, that this weight they were carrying around, they're no longer having to carry. And there's no shame attached to it. And there's no anxiety attached to it. And there's no horror attached to it. It's just a thing that you can process. And yeah, therapy just massively helped me with that. And it's weirdly addictive. Like you think, great, let's find out more about myself. I think the scariest part of it is deciding to do it. That's the hardest bit. And I actually find generally, organizing things, even if someone said, oh, the heating's gone, you have to book a plumber, I would find that overwhelming. There's something about logistics, day-to-day tasks I find very overwhelming. And like any of those things, once you do it, you realize, oh, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard to book a plumber, and it isn't that hard to find a therapist. And you don't have to commit if you don't like them. You don't have to commit to the first one. You can try a few. Think of it like dating, but it's really easy to say the benefits on the other side of it. I think it's really hard to hear those benefits beforehand because it's expensive and it feels like, why would I want to revisit any of those painful things? Why would I want to stare at myself and do it? And I think about that with phobias sometimes. If someone said, if you've got a phobia of spiders and someone says, hey, come and pay £100 a week for the next 8 weeks, and at the end of it, we're going to put a spider on your hand and you're going to be fine. You would think, well, I don't want a spider on my hand because I'm scared of spiders. And so why would I ever want to go? I'll just avoid the spiders for the rest of my life. I'll just avoid spiders. And I don't want to spend £800 on being able to have a spider on my hand at the end of it. And what you don't realize is how much freer you will feel at the end of it when you're not letting that fear control whatever it is. And obviously, spiders, a small fry. But if there is stuff that's gone on in your life, it's unbelievably beneficial to chat about it. I'm here for it.
Yes, I'm here for it as well. Totally here for it. And another side of it is, I think once you've been through something like that and you're more open to it, then we can help our children be more open and mindful of themselves and be able to express things and talk about things. I think it goes further than just the person who's going through therapy. It bleeds into our families, it bleeds into our lives, and it does nothing but help those other parts of our lives. Yeah,
I think it's amazing actually that the way that it helps, because you're having to process your own feelings, and there's, we have more, I guess, more complex or perhaps more barriers in place, mental barriers in place to our own feelings as adults. We've sort of put these protective roadblocks in place. But as a kid, it's so at the surface, if they're upset by something or they, and often it's something that's not rational or whatever, the kindest thing to do is talk them through their own feelings. And I really want that from Ivy and from the next one. I want them to feel like they can know themselves and talk to us and come to us without fear of any judgment, and for us to sort of be able to guide them emotionally. And it's in the same ways that you pinch other behaviors from people in life, sometimes the therapist says something, you think, oh, I'm keeping that, I'm going to use that with the next time that something kicks off with Ivy.
Yeah, having had a dad who was bipolar and yourself having cyclothymia, is that how you
cyclothymia? Yeah, cyclothymia. I bet it's the only time you ever hear it in your life. It's a strange one. It's the sort of thing that I feel like I definitely should be talking about, because I reckon there'll be other people out there who can relate to that feeling of like, sometimes I feel like I'm a superhero and I've got so much energy and I get loads done, and then other times I feel a bit flat. And it's it has a name. Go and get it checked out.
Yeah. So having a dad who's been bipolar, you've suffered with your own mental health. Do you worry about your children?
I think it's a challenging one to spend too much time worrying about. And I'll be honest, if there's something to worry about, I will normally worry about it. I'm a big worrier. But no, and I think part of that comes from the sense of I'm going to I'm going to make sure that the foundations are there for her to be able to talk about these things. And it's the craziest thing that if you are feeling a bit down, or you can't put your finger on why, or maybe you can, you're embarrassed by something from the world that's triggered you into feeling a certain way, and you think it's almost a shame of like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like that. If like a colleague gets a promotion over you, or it's even like, oh, you were really excited about that piece of carrot cake, and someone else has just nabbed it before you in the canteen. It's not there, and you've been thinking about it all day. I just being able to say to somebody, this is how I'm feeling, and then go, okay, yeah, without any you don't have to fix it, no judgment. I find it so helpful. I had it the other day where I was just no idea why, woke up feeling quite low, and I was having a cup of tea at a cafe with my wife and our friend Laura, and I just had it in my brain, this sort of swirling, anxious, negative thoughts, and I just thought, I'm just going to have to say, this is going on for me right now, and just to let you know, and I did, and it's killed it. It had no power over me. It was amazing just to be able to say to two people, and they were like, "Oh, sorry to hear that," and that was it. From that, my day went up from that point. It's so weird, isn't it? The human mind.
It is. It's very, very weird. But to be able to be, you probably wouldn't have been able to be open like that before. So it would have changed the trajectory of your day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wouldn't have acknowledged it. I'd have tried to sort of bury it deep and hide from it. And I think just having an awareness of like, oh, sometimes you're not going to feel great, and also having things in place. Like I found some tools for me that are incredibly beneficial at lifting me out of when I can feel myself going into one of the downward phases. I've got like a real method that works for me. And equally, if I feel myself going a bit crazy into, not crazy, that's the wrong word to use. If I feel myself going a bit into the more hyper stage, I can recognize that and go, as tempting as it feels, there's a better way of structuring this. And so yeah, and I would not have got any of that without, chatting to someone about the cyclothymia and the other therapy stuff.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned it a few times. You're quite a creative person. You like to have lots of fun, and you and Ivy play a lot, yeah?
Yeah. I'm her kind of chief make-believe buddy, and I find it quite easy. I find it, my wife, I'm not going to say she hates it, but she it's a struggle for her to go and, be a pirate or be a shopkeeper or whatever. She does it. She's good at it, but she doesn't. Yeah, it's not her natural area. But
whereas you can run around as a lion dinosaur shopkeeper.
Yeah, I quite like the play, and I quite like structuring it. I quite like, it's like you're directing in a way, aren't you? With playtime. You're constant, and you're collaborating. You're pitching ideas on what if we do this, and the other person's like, oh no, we should do that. And I like that. I like the kind of creative sparring of playing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I've got no interest in it, and I'm really tired, and my head's not in it. But if you get me on a good day, I'm a fantastic play buddy, and I have this haunting feeling that this time is finite at this age, where she really wants to just come and do silly things that aren't encumbered with shame or embarrassment, or I'm too cool for that, or I'm not interested, or I just want to do something on my own. This is a kind of magic window of time where I am the coolest person in the world and her favorite person to play with, and I have a real sense of that clock ticking, and wanting to make the most of it. So yeah, I'm here for the imaginative play, and my goodness me, she's amazing at coming up with stuff. She's a sort of creative powerhouse when it comes to coming up with new scenarios for playing.
This is it, because when we met, as you know, we talked about a game that you and your daughter had come up with. Tell us a bit about that and the other games that you've been doing, because you've got into this world of designing like family games, really. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a sort of, I said I have 100 ideas and 2 of them happen. This is one of the ones that happened. So I I've always loved games, board games, and things like that. But more than that, what I like is format. Like I love a quiz show on the telly. I love figuring out how all the bits of it go together, the mechanics of it, the rules, or what happens if this occurs, what happens if that occurs. For some reason, I just really like structured fun. Um, and and so a few years ago, I had an idea for a board game, having never made one before, and I took it to a company called Big Potato, a game called Obama Llama, which is all about celebrities doing things that rhyme with their own name. Barack Obama on a llama, George Clooney pulling a moonie, Britney Spears using garden shears, that sort of thing. And it did really well. And I think, if you do a thing once, you think, oh, I could do that again. And so I sort of had this odd side project that would happen every sort of 3 months. I'd think up a new board game and I'd go and sell it to someone and they'd make it. So I've got about 6 or 7 games out in the world, but they're all designed by and manufactured by and distributed by other people. So I was just the ideas guy, and that really suited me. But then when the pandemic happened, I found myself locked in the room that I'm in now, staring at a lot of empty space. And I thought, what can I do to pass the time? And I had 2 projects. I'll tell you about the other one in a second, but I had 2 things that were like, right, this is going to keep me sane during this time. And I thought, why not try and make a board game, but all of it, do the design of it and manufacture it and all the rest of it. And as I said, logistics is not my bag, but my brother-in-law is fantastic at being a logistical guy. He hasn't got a creative bone in his body, so it's quite a good partnership because he just lets me do the ideas and then he'll say, right, I found a factory and we've got a truck picking it up and it's taking it to this warehouse, and he does all of that stuff. And so I just had to go in lockdown at making a game. And we made a game called Answergrams, which is like a trivia game with a bit of a countdown conundrum thing at the end of it. And it did really well. And, I made so many errors in making the game. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But the stakes were incredibly low because it was only me that I was working to. It was if I make it, great. If I don't, I don't. So I had to learn Illustrator, which is a very complex, frustrating piece of software. I had to figure out how to do graphic design. I hadn't done anything like it before. And I made this game through sort of blood, sweat, and tears, and it did really well. And John Lewis, the department store, heard about it and said, oh, we'd like to stock that game. Do you have any other ideas? And that is the most dangerous thing they could have said to me, because I'm like, yeah, every day I think up a new board game idea. I just don't have anything to do with it. And at the time I'd been working on this game with Ivy, and it had come off the back of her doing painting. She's really into painting and drawing. And we had these paints out, kind of poster paints. And I left her for about a minute to go and rinse some paintbrushes under the tap. So she was at the kitchen table. I had my back turned. And I just heard from the other side of the room her go, and I was like, oh no, what's happened? It must have gone everywhere. And I turned round and it was fine. And I said, what's gone on? And she said, Daddy, I've invented purple. And I thought, oh, you've mixed red and blue and you've created purple. And her mind was blown. And I thought, there's something in that as a game. There's something in mixing colours and being surprised by the result of it. And so we sat right then and there, and I was like, right, what could mix together to make a thing? And she was like, birds, they could lay an egg. And I was like, you're absolutely right. 2 birds could lay an egg, and the egg would be the colour of the 2 birds. If I had a blue bird and a red bird, they'd lay a purple egg. And then I was like, great, that's it. And so I just worked up the mechanics of the game into a sort of structure where it would play like Snap or Dobble, so kind of fast-paced, but would rely on people having to mix either the colours of these birds or the colours of the backgrounds that they were on. And we just played it every day. We made a version out of, bits of card that I printed off here. And we just played it non-stop. And we kind of figured out the mechanics together. And, if someone gets something wrong, well, they should be punished for that. So, you know, they'll put a card in the middle, and we kind of figured it out together over a few weeks of playing it. And we still play it a lot now because, you know, now we can play the real version. And so, yeah, we sold that into John Lewis and other places. And yeah, it's called Egg Slam. And it's fantastic. It's great. And it's a great thing for her to have seen as well, because she's really been there on the entire process of the idea going from in our brains to then we can walk into a shop and see it.
That is such an incredible thing. I mean, we're all about championing dads being involved with their kids and playing with their kids and stuff. But you now have something that will be like etched in time forever. That like me and my daughter, and for her, me and my dad, we used to play this game, and now it's a nationally available game that that came out of a bit of fun between me and my daughter. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been really fun, and you know, anything I do that's a bit creative, I do try and get her involved or excited. You know, she's very into. I do like a bit of. I've been trying to learn music production, and I've got her into drum sequencing. So she loves just creating drum beats, but because it's, you know, I don't know if you've ever used a sequencer, but it's basically dividing the time up into
4,
the divisions
16, 8, yeah.
Exactly, into the divisions of like a musical bar.
Yeah.
And so it means that you can turn sounds on and off at any point, and it's going to sound in time. It might not sound great, but it will sound in time. And she loves, you know, turning on hi-hats or kick drums or snares or whatever, just playing with the order of them and creating little drum loops. It's one of her favourite things to do. I'll wind back a few years ago, because my job on the radio, a few years ago, I got to go to a recording studio. Now, I'm not musical at all. I can't play any instruments. I can't sing. I can barely clap in time. If you've ever seen me dance, I am a man who has not got rhythm in his bones. But obviously love playing songs on the radio and love music. But the idea of its creation was so away from what I ever thought I could get interested in. But I went to this studio as a thing for the radio where we're going to write a silly song with the pop star Example and his producer. And we were in this room and we're just trying to come up with this thing. And I was like, I kind of know what I want it to be. And I said, I don't know how to express this, but I can hear this thing. And I sang something out of tune. And the producer was like, oh, yeah, that's a bass line you've just hummed there. And he turned to his keyboard and he played what I just hummed. And I was like, oh my God, that is the feeling I've been chasing my whole life, which is the immediate download of a thought from my head existing in the real world. You know, if you've ever tried to make anything, if you've tried to do like build a shed, you have to build the shed. It takes ages. If you've tried to draw a picture, it takes ages to do. If you've tried to make a board game, it took me a year to get a game from, you know, start to finish. Making TV shows takes forever, making radio takes forever. This was like, I thought it, that guy played it. Oh my goodness. It took 2 seconds. And so that kept happening in this session where I'd keep saying, I can hear almost like a bell going ding, 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 ding. And he'd go, find a bell and play it in. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need some of this in my life. And I went home and I was like, right, I'm opening up GarageBand on my laptop and I'm going to try and figure this out. And I knew almost less than nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, when lockdown happened, I was like, right, I've got time. I'm going to make an album. And I'm going to do it with the biggest pop stars I can get my hands on. And so I slid into the DMs of 10 of my favorite musicians and said, hey, I'm really bored. Do you want to come and write a song with me? And I thought I'd record it as a podcast, like we are now. And I had no idea how it would go. But I booked them all in and I said, I need 3 hours of your time and we're going to write a song. You're going to send me a vocal and then I'm going to produce it, because then I've got something to work towards. I've got a thing that I'm going to do. And it was amazing. They all said yes. So I've done a song with James Arthur, Griff, Tom Grennan, Tom Walker, Maisie Peters, Sigrid, Becky Hill. I don't want to forget anyone here.
Wow.
Ray.
This is incredible. And this was all off the back of working with, did you say Example?
Yeah, I did one day as a joke in the studio with this thing, but it changed my life because I was like, I need that feeling that I've just experienced there. And I need to be the one able to translate it from my head into the real world. And so, yeah, the podcast is called Not Another Love Song. I don't know when this is going out, but it'll probably be out by the time this goes out. It's launching in a couple of weeks from now. And yeah, it's 10 episodes, 10 songs. And the only rule is that the song has to be about something unexpected that they would never normally write a song about. They're sort of silly subject matters, but we take the songwriting incredibly seriously. So we've done a song, the James Arthur one's about hay fever, the Maisie Peters one's about Timothée Chalamet, the Ray one is about birthday cards, the Sigrid one's about watching TikTok, Becky Hill's is about the woman who pops pimples, Dr. Pimple Popper.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And so, but I've tried to make them in the genre of each of the artists.
This sounds wicked. I'm going to be downloading this podcast. This is sounding amazing.
So yeah, you got to imagine, like, it's basically an idiot who knew nothing about music figuring out how to do it, so you hear us write the song together, which is quite a thing I've never heard anyone do before, because you normally, retrospectively, people say, oh, we made the song and this is how it was made, and there's a kind of sugar coating to it. But actually, just hearing two people both try and get to the best version of an idea, it's really, you don't see or hear it that often. And obviously, I have no experience in the area. So when I'm saying, oh, I think it should do this, it's a fantastic dynamic of someone who knows what they're doing and someone who doesn't, trying to achieve the same thing. And then, yeah, I also explain how I made it, how I made the song before you hear the song. And then you hear the full song and they sound like songs you would hear on the radio by those artists. At the end of the podcast, you hear we've done, full 3.5 minute, 4 minute song for each person. And they've done their vocals in studios. It sounds unbelievable. So yeah, that's...
I'm looking forward to that. Plus, if you ever need to get a nursery rhyme together for your newest one, you need to hit me and Giovanna up. So we'll get a little nursery rhyme happening for you.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, perfect.
Listen, Matt, I've taken up so much of your time, but there's one more thing that I need to do before you go. We ask all the people that come on the Dadventures podcast this very thing. If you had a dad superpower, what would it be and why?
I think my dad's superpower would be being able to make any food taste however Ivy wanted it to taste. I would be able to pick up broccoli and make it taste like
pizza.
Sweets. Exactly. Yeah, she's a tough negotiator when it comes to food, and that's one of the. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's one of the few challenges that we have with her of like, oh, can you just try this new thing? I do have a tip which I can share, which feels like a superpower for any other dads who are going through a similar thing where their child will, you'll finally get them to eat something, let's say broccoli, for example, and they eat it and they accept like, oh, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I really thought the world was going to end, but here I am eating the broccoli and it's okay. And then the next day even, or the next time you come to eat broccoli, the same thing happens where you're like, I can't eat that. Well, you ate it yesterday, and that logic doesn't cut through. I've started archiving messages labeled under different foods from Ivy to her future self. And it's one of the most powerful tools imaginable, because if she eats something and she's okay with it, I interview her for 30 seconds after. I say, what have you just eaten? I've just eaten broccoli. How was it? It was good. Did you like it? Yeah. Would you eat it again? Yes. Okay. In the future, you're going to not want to eat this. What would you say to yourself? Oh, I think I should eat it. Okay. Can you tell yourself that then? Yes. Okay. Ivy, eat the broccoli. It's nice. Thanks very much.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Is a parenting top tip right there.
It's incredible. I've got about 50 videos labeled as different foods, and I do it for every single one, and it's been a game changer.
Matt, it's been absolutely incredible. You've been so open, so helpful, so funny as well. Thank you so much for being part of this and joining the Dadventures podcast. Hopefully I'll see you soon, and we'll get to writing that nursery rhyme.
Yeah, fantastic. I look forward to it. I'll get Ivy to start programming a beat now.
Do it. I'm excited about this. So interesting listening to Matt talk about his life growing up and how his dad was, how he is as a father, how he's dealt with mental health, how he's really involved with his child. So much in there, and I hope you enjoyed listening. So there you have it, another fantastic episode. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have time, leave us a review. We'd love to hear what you thought of this episode or of the series as a whole. And don't forget, you can subscribe or follow using your preferred podcast platform to be first to hear the episodes. If you'd like to find out more about Dadvengers, head to dadventures.com, where you can find out more information about our live chats, about our meetups, quizzes, blog posts, and more. This has been the Dadventures podcast, sponsored by Tonka, because being tough is all about getting out and playing.